And welcome back. You're watching News Sources. And the inmates at the Mathari Mental Hospital provided yesterday's biggest shocker for news. The patients were filmed by the public jumping over the fence and taking off. Some of the patients were taken back by hard-working staffers, but obviously overwhelmed. Now, in the panel, I'm joined by an actual doctor, actually, Dr. Mathari. We've been discussing this, absence. But the issues of just the strike and bringing the Mathari into context and into question, what is the bone of contention according to you?
Let's first understand that the doctors' issue dates back to the 90s. It's not something that started the other day. So the first strike that the doctors had, or the first agitation for well-paying, proper pay for doctors started back in the 1994. So this is not the first time. In Kenya, doctors, once they finish school, they're absorbed into the public service, and they're absorbed like any other civil servant. And the job entry for doctors right now is at job group L, where the basic salary, on average, let's say 35 to 40,000. And it's like for any other public servant. So the question has always been, the doctor will probably work for 24 hours, 36 hours. We've been on our feet for even 72 hours non-stop. So is it fair that this person who works throughout earns the same as any other public servant who goes to work from 8 to 5? Definitely not. If doctors, the minimum training was 5 years, now it has gone to 6 years. 6 years you're doing your undergraduate degree. Is it fair that you still come and earn the same probably as somebody who went to a diploma course or something? We have to be fair and remunerate doctors fairly.
Or like Danish went for his undergraduate for 1.5 years, and then you earn the same with you. And that's where just puts the whole context into problem. But I'm really interested about what happened in Mathari, the other day, and the complexities and what people cannot understand is, so the doctors or the people taking, take care of the patients, left, and then these guys decided to, jump off the building. What do we know?
I think we should understand that this time round, both the doctors and the nurses were on strike. So while previously maybe the doctors would be on strike, the nurses
would take care of something.
But now all of them are on strike. So who takes care of these patients?
I don't know what became of this issue of patients running away from Mathari. Maybe it's because this one's able to run. You see, patients in Kenyatta are not able to walk out if you are in sick bed. I heard someone make a comment about it and saying that when they were being arrested, they even arrested those who are not patients. They just drove them back there so you can go and prove your case inside there, whether you are originally there or not. But the issue here is, as she says, how you pay out the doctors. In fact, not even just the doctors. How do you balance the job groups? I have a friend who keeps asking, if I am a police officer serving at, I'm a CID officer or an investigator serving at the Kenya Anti-Corruption Commission, I'm paid 200,000 shillings over and above that. I don't know how much they earn, but just about that. And another police officer serving in a police station where you are paid 30,000 shillings. These are two men doing the same job, they are more or less entitled to same kind of remuneration, isn't it? So, as she says, when a doctor has trained for 7 years, and then you expect this doctor will be paid just like any other civil servant who has worked into this job, and even the responsibility, the life, what they are taking care of. These are things that we must ask. We must ask ourselves as we go on.
But could it be that we're also ignoring the issue of facilities maybe in Mathari, the hospital itself, that probably the patients rather run away than be treated?
I think there's a bigger story to tell in Mathari for I think every time, and things been brought about every so often, why do the inmates, why do the patients there find the latest opportunities to, take off? I think there's a story right there.
I think Mathari can be a whole story in itself that maybe we may not be able to address today.
All right, let's stick with it. And hours before the strike, Cabinet Secretary for Health, Cleopa Mailu, hurriedly convened a presser like he convened a few hours ago today, flanked with Cabinet Secretary for Finance and other senior officials at the top. Jubilee Point men were unable to convince the doctors to put off the strike. The Jubilee principals, however, President Uhuru Kenyatta, spent Monday locked in. Today he was in a function, while his deputy in his business as usual, opening more Jubilee development projects in Garissa. That didn't go quite well. Danish.
I think it's quite unfortunate that we actually dropped the whole of the 5 billion or 3 billion, the issues that were raised in the ministry. Now we pick up the issue of, doctors, and it shows how goldfish memory a nation we are actually, where we pick up issues and forget about fast.
I think, sorry to cut you short,
Yes.
but as you see, the hashtag that the doctors have been trending with is Lipa Kama Tender.
Yes.
And it was born from the fact that the Ministry of Health was plagued by the alleged scandal.
So they have money. There was proof that there was money.
Yes, so now the thinking was, if we could actually even perceive that there's some 5 billion, 3 billion that is lost from the Ministry of Health, then why can't doctors be paid?
My issue is this, that the fourth estate plays a very important role in putting, the agenda setting role of the media is very critical.
Yeah,
and
sure.
if we had sustained the conversation about the 5 billion shillings, and we sustain now, it then comes together with the issue of the doctor strike, then it puts everything into perspective. But right now, we've actually forgotten about that money. Now we're focusing on the doctor strike. In 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'd have forgotten about that. We'll now be picking the next issue. My challenge to us, the fourth estate, is this. Let us continue to remind a public that keeps on forgetting easily of what is a priority to them. And health is a priority to us. I think there's no excuse why a doctor should not be paid. I even personally feel bad that with my BCom and my journalism degree, that you actually live somewhere better than people who actually treat you. It's a shame. It's a shame. In South Africa, doctors are paid very well. But of course, in the region, we can boast with the regions where our GDP is much, much way bigger than theirs. But then we boast and say, oh, in the region, we're doing the very best. Why are we comparing ourselves with poor?
I still hold, and I think people contest it. Why do we have to pay our politicians, MCs, 400, 500K a month, MPs 1.2 million or something close to that in a month? Why do you have to pay them so much, and we cannot even pay our doctors half of that money?
You see, they have added themselves salaries every other year. And the justification always is that we have, if you listen to them, they'll tell you that we always have people some extra budgets we have to meet out there. Some harambes. You see now they are contributing millions in harambes. They'll tell you we have families we take care of, people who come to see us. Forgetting all what the constitutional role of an MP, for example. But that is normally the justification. So they'll ask you, if you are to ask why pay them, they might tell you, what is a doctor paying? If I pay a doctor 500,000 shillings, who is he taking care of out there, as opposed to those people who come to my door every morning? Okay? Because that has been the argument, that pay us well because there are people whom we are, quote-unquote, taking care of outside there.
I think we live in a society where we glorify politicians more than the people who actually matter.
Sure.
Because even that politician, when they fall sick, whom do they go to? And the reason that they need to be paid more because they go for harambes and whatnot, why don't they focus and channel our taxes to improving health services so that they don't have to contribute in harambes, where people can actually go and seek health services without having that contribution?
Very important. I'm asking people on Twitter, and get to like the panel things, if you think the government has enough money to pay the doctors. I mean, not everyone is an economist and a financial expert, but I don't know. Tweet me at James Smart, #News Sources. But let's move on to something else. That was not only the strike in town, that's the doctor strike. The engineers attached to the national carrier Kenya Airways also downed their tools yesterday, causing massive transport havoc. Dozens of flights were either delayed, rescheduled, or cancelled. Travelers are not amused by their travel plans, knocked off by the strike, and the airline top officials have been unable to answer the questions of the engineers, and the strike is still on. Take a listen.
Flights to London, to Amsterdam, Johannesburg, Lagos, Mumbai. About 16 flights have already left. Our operation team is doing everything possible, and we thank our customers.
We go back to the same point that there's something that is happening in this country that, was this a coordinated attempt? Maybe?
Fair. Let me say this about this KQ strike. You see, I learned about it a little bit later, because when you talk about airlines and flying, that is considered more of an elitist kind of an engagement. The number of Kenyans who will fly in a day are just a small fraction of our population. Okay? But as you asked, that's a build-up to what is happening, in our country. It's a build-up to this population that has resolved that we will push for these things, we will fight for them, we will do what we can. Where we can steal, we will steal, we care less. Where we are not able to, we will strike. Where we feel that we are oppressed, we will push. You see doctors on strike so that whether hospitals are closed, that is not an issue. And that's the country. That's the country we're having, and so unfortunate.
Yeah.
I think in any civilization, for any civilization to have gotten to where they are, part of industrial unrest is part of the development
It's part of being
any
civilized.
Yes, it's part of getting civilized. So I'm actually quite not happy, but I think it's a pointer towards something better where as a country we are going. Because once now the engineers are on strike, we have the doctors and the nurses, the teachers the other day. For any government that is keen on what is happening, then it's a wake-up call to actually change something and do something about the people's welfare.
Pretty agree with her. But I think at the bottom of it all is what we call the anti-intellectual spirit that is flowing in this country, where we tend to celebrate buffoons and people who have deeper pockets, questionable deeper pockets, and can carry money using sacks. Those are now our heroes. But I think we actually need to realize that this country is on a ticking time bomb. If every critical industry, like now, we're already struggling with tourism in this country. That's such a serious industry. Like, you know, the country is still struggling to stand on its feet, having recorded losses and done, you know, management structures, restructuring. I think, as I agree with her, as much as we are hoping that out of this unrest, we're going to have a country that then is growing, but let us ask ourselves, should we take away from the MCAs and give the engineers?
I think so.
Or can we give both of them and actually live happily ever after?
Even if it was possible for us to pay doctors and pay MCAs and MPs, I'm very happy for us to take from the MPs and MCAs
but we're
and
democracy.
pay doctors. But hang on, the Kenyan people are too overrepresented, okay? We have an MCA saying Danish does not have a road. Then the MP would say Danish does not have a road. Then the senator will repeat Danish does not have a road. Then the governor would come and say Danish. So
we voted for the constitution. Unless you want to introduce a banana republic, where we're actually willing to steal from other people to give others.
Constitution is not the Bible. We can always change it.
Yeah.
We are talking about a country. We are talking about a situation where we have had just reports how the CDF money has been lost. Okay, and the argument is, or the exchange is, that when money is lost, our politicians will tell us, the MPs who are part of this CDF will tell us there are managers and there are committees to be asked for that. When the projects are implemented, they are the first ones to come and chest. Okay? So the question you're asking is, how many people will implement? Who is in charge of? Who is in charge?
Who's actually doing something?
Yes.
I think our country as it is now, we are supply-driven than demand-driven, where we are looking at what can we supply. I think we should do a road. Have you asked yourself if Danish needs that road actually? We ask ourselves, we want to supply medical equipment. Do you actually need that medical equipment? So we are more supply-driven than demand-driven as a country. So that's where we go wrong.
Economy.
Let's stay with this KQ and it's a haste, because the details of the mess at the Kenya Airways is just beginning to unravel. Big Issue magazine claims a greedy web of corrupt Kenya Airways employees in cahoots with businessmen are behind a 100 billion five-year haste. The story reads like a compelling movie, complete with middlemen in a sophisticated looting scheme. I don't know if you guys have read about this story, but what happened at KQ, it needs to be turned into a movie. It would be a blockbuster, I promise you. This is something that Hollywood, it's a script. They need to find it.
Certainly, yes. I've read a bit about it. But I was just reading about it in relation to what is happening elsewhere. You see, if we were to make a movie out of stealing in this country, we would have several of them. We have several versions. And we are yet to find more. Someone was asking, actually, how many people, if we have one person carrying money from a bank as a claim that I took money at midnight and left with it in bags, how many other people are doing the same? You see, at what point will we discover this? You might just realize that we'll have better movies than the KQ haste here, because that is the country we are having at the moment. And it is so unfortunate. We will keep on saying it's unfortunate until we do something about that.
There's a Swahili saying, which is one of my favorites, that I think really represents Kenya, which says, Kila mwamba ngoma huvutia kwake. So here you find a situation where everyone is looking at taking all that they can for themselves. So if everyone is selfish and takes everything for themselves, then who thinks about that poor person who doesn't have a voice? If everyone wants to take and take and take, what about that person who can't take?
It appears that's what we do.
Yeah.
That you be a director of something and that's what you're going to make your...
Have we not stolen yet because we don't have an opportunity or what?
No. We have not stolen because we don't have. In fact, I keep asking myself, if I will come tomorrow and I am in charge of a ministry, will I steal? And I think this is a question every Kenyan has to ask themselves. Because we keep on talking about corruption. Corruption today, tomorrow, the other day. And every time corruption is mentioned, we point fingers. It's him, it's her, not me. So at what point will I say, now it's me, today, starting today?
I think we'll run the danger of normalizing corruption by asking this question that if you were the KQ CEO, for instance, 5 years ago, would you have done the same thing? Would you have taken the NYS tender?
I don't think it's normalizing it. I think it's a self-reflection question because at the end of the day, we cannot all continue to point fingers. And an African proverb says that a stubborn fly follows the corpse to the grave. That's what we're actually doing. We're actually busy following corpses and eventually we'll be buried with them. Unless at that point where we begin to deal with the moral decay that this country is facing, 100 million shillings will still be lost, 100 billion will be lost, and many more will be lost. At the end of the day, we are actually looking for opportunities to steal. Anybody who is given a tender, you must bribe your way through to get that money, especially if you're dealing with some of the government officials. So how then do you hope to change that if we begin to steal from KCPE, KCSE, and eventually you become a CEO? The moral fiber of this country must be changed, and it will only be changed if we reform our education system and we actually commit to punishing people who steal. But unless we still hold our hands and say, oh, as long as they're the ones for stealing and not us, we are good to go. We will not solve the corruption issue.
The question is then, who is it that should actually change that moral fiber?
Certainly.
If the powers that be keep asking us, what do you want us to do?
It begins from the family. It begins from the family. Father, mother, family.
And those powers that be, once I identify myself and say I'm not corrupt, I won't steal, then I must be in a position to deal with the person who is stealing. And every Kenyan has a vote. Anyone who votes. If the power or the powers that be are telling us that what can I do, then you look for those who can do something.
And you still vote for them. The blame comes back right to you. And this thing must begin from the family level, where we must begin to instill values in our children and instill values in our families. We don't wait for the government to do everything for us.
This value thing is going to take us the next 50 years before the children grow up and they take up offices.
It's all right.
But finally, the Orange Democratic Movement has expelled 10 of its errand members, formerly known as rebels. Former Secretary General Ababu Namwamba was the star. Another 8 MPs were sent packing. It is now all eyes on the registrar of political parties to send a note to the Speaker of the House, who in turn is required to declare the seats vacant. What a time to be alive. Let's take a listen.
To uphold its decision of the 31st October 2016 that the following members be forthwith expelled from the party. As many are of this opinion, say aye. Aye. As many are of contrary opinion, say no. The ayes have it.
There was not even one single no or nay, just for the cameras.
Maybe they're not captured. Eh?
Maybe they're not captured by the cameras.
Strategically, ODM has done a huge blunder. Why have they done a huge blunder? We are just a few months before the general elections. As soon as we begin this by elections in February, and their opponents begin to pour money to try to see how to destabilize them and to paint them as people who are going to fail in the 2017 elections, they will work as hard as they did in Kajiado and many by elections that they've actually fought tooth and nail to win back. And what that will do is it will then expose the rot that is in the party and will expose their soft underbelly. So strategically, that's a very terrible decision, and I don't know who's advising these people. But in terms of now sticking to what the rule says, I think they are brilliant. But they've done a terrible mistake, in my opinion.
Mathari, what's your diagnosis?
No, personally, I think that's a good move. Looking at the history of this country, where we have people changing party outfits every now and then to suit them. ODM is looking at making themselves as a party. So let's look at it as them telling everyone that if you come to this party, these are our principles, these are our rules, you have to stick by them. So for me, as a party, I think it's
building the democracy, the constitution, the moral fiber that you'll be talking a minute ago. Someone is building it and you're saying
elections are about, you win an election, and perception is reality in politics. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, you need to win elective seats for you to ever have power. And next year, it's about power. If you don't finish that power, how will you ever bring this
I mean, even if constitutionally and morally you're stepping on people's toes, just win power.
Let me look at it from, front backwards. First, the law is clear that 3 months to election, the general election can't hold a by-election. However, even if these guys have been kicked out at this point in time, I can assure you there will be no by-election. What is going to happen is that in between, you see, nobody is going to test the waters at this point before the general election. What is going to happen is that they will be playing around with it, whether they are in ODM, whether they are out there in the cold, whether they will have joined other parties. But for the time being, and they know, but let me put it this way. What ODM has done, I would give it credit to say that if you have been elected in a party, and consistently for 3 years, you are following the principles of whatever policies of this party. Then at some point in time, when you know now it's safe, you start differing so as to impress one or other people outside there. Then you should lose that position. You should lose your membership of the party, even at the very last minute. Okay, so that it becomes clear that once you're a member of this party, you'll stick to us, go with us, all the way to the end. Other than that, just be an independent candidate. Nobody is stopping you from being
In the book, that's excellent. But as a strategist, I think ODM needs less dissidents than actually these people they've actually expelled.
Okay, final thoughts. Mathari, how do you think this strike is going to go? What's your feeling? What's your gut feeling? What are you hearing?
I think we're in it for the long haul. From the look of things, the doctors are unrelenting, the nurses the same. So somebody has to be the bigger person, and this time around I'm hoping the government will, because they are the ones who hold our taxes.
All right, Tanisha Dongo, Dr. Masi Korir, Nahomi Duku, and Elon Jankania Ucheno, who was with us. Thank you very much all for your time and for giving us those insights. That does it for us here on KTN News Sources. Up next is Skid in Prime with Sophia Aduna. Don't go too far.